So in a previous video you might have seen me complaining about slugs on my ground cover, because I like to hammock camp and I like to have a ground cover, you know, some kind of a little mat or something that I can step onto when I get out of my hammock, because I'm usually just wearing socks or my bare feet when I'm in my hammock. And I don't necessarily want to step on the ground if it's wet, cold, or full of slugs, so I like to have a little mat to step onto. I had to go get my jacket, I was getting cold. So one thing I don't like about, I used to use like a little a yoga mat that I had bought and cut into small pieces, one for the dog to lay on and one for me to step on, and it would just get covered with slugs on the bottom, on the top, in my shoes. And there's nothing worse than getting up in the middle of the night out of your hammock to go take a pee and stepping on a slug and squashing it. Oh my God, it's so disgusting. So I had to figure out a better way. So I told the story in a previous video about one night we were out hammock camping, and it was raining out. It was pouring rain and it was cold, so I had some extra supplies with me that I kept under the tarp just in case. And one of them was something called a grabber blanket, or it's like that tarp material, like those cheap blue tarps are made out of, and one side is green and the other side is silver, aluminized. And when the wind changed direction, it was blowing in under my tarp and I was getting really wet. I jumped up and grabbed that grabber blanket and tied it up on the end. And of course it stopped the rain from blowing in, it stopped the wind. But when I got up in the morning, I noticed that while everything else on the ground, or that had been in contact with the ground, you know, was just covered in slugs. It was just gross, except my grabber blanket. And I thought, what gives? It's gotta have something to do with that silver side, right? So when I got home from the camping trip, I hopped online. Do slugs not like metal? You know, and I started doing some searches, and I found out slugs don't like crawling across metal. So this gave me a great idea. Well, I didn't want to use a grabber blanket as a ground cover. I wanted something lightweight and easy to fold up and small, to go under my hammock as a little ground cover for me to step on. So I don't want, it doesn't have to be anything big and heavy. I wanted something small and lightweight. So I did a search online for metal fabric, and I found that not only do slugs not like metal, but they really hate copper. So I did a search for copper fabric, and I found some. It's really cool, right? It is made out of copper. It does have some nickel and polyester in it, and they say it's not to use it for long-term exposure next to the skin, but since I'm only going to be stepping on it in my socks when I get out of my hammock, I figure this is good for it, because the slugs are going to hate it. So I bought it on Amazon, a whole big sheet. I don't remember the dimensions, but it was like 12 bucks for a pretty nice size sheet. I should be able to make 2 ground covers out of it. And this is the label that came with it. Tells you a little bit about it. Now, I wrote to them and asked them if it was waterproof. And what I mean is that water can't pass through it. And they assured me that water cannot pass through it. Well, they are incorrect. While it may not get wet and hold water the way something made out of natural fibers might, water definitely does pass through this. I put it over a cup, poured water into it, and within seconds water was dripping through it. So it's not waterproof per se. I wanted it as a ground cloth to use it just by itself, that I could just throw on the ground, but if the ground is wet, water is going to seep through and your stuff's going to get wet. Okay. I don't know if it'll really soak through since it's not absorbent. So maybe water won't pass up into it, but it's definitely not waterproof. Water will pass through it. So, you know, when you lay a blanket on the ground and water is absorbed from the ground up, your stuff gets wet. Whether or not, some weird message just came up on my phone. I don't know what it was. Hope you couldn't see it. So I don't know if this will work that way, but I don't want to get out there and be out there and try it out and have it fail, and I'm just not motivated enough to try it in the backyard. So I'm actually going to make a ground cloth out of it using this and another layer of fabric that I know is waterproof. Don't brush against an electrical outlet while you're holding this. It's one of the warnings. But anyway, I'll show you what I'm going to do. I moved to a better area so the background's a little bit nicer. I realized the background before was the front of my garage. It's not the prettiest background. Maybe this is a little bit better. So what I have is a piece of, you know those old camping chairs? Everybody has those fold-up camping chairs and they all come in a matching bag. Well, we had a camping chair that broke and we harvested things from it, like the bag. And I used part of it to make some covers for machete, made a cover for a little hatchet. And I had just enough left over to make a nice little ground cloth. Now this by itself would be a really nice ground cloth, and I had anticipated using just this as a ground cloth under my hammock to get out of my hammock and step on, because one side is that plasticky vinyl stuff and the other side is, you know, the soft fabric, whatever the stuff is made out of. I don't know what you call it, but you know, it's waterproof and it's, you know, can handle some abrasion, and it's pretty tough, you know. And I thought this would make a perfect ground cloth until I realized that slugs will be all over it. I thought they wouldn't crawl on the fabric part, but they do. In fact, I had thrown a wool blanket on the ground one time thinking, oh, they wouldn't crawl on that because it's itchy, and they did. They left those little shiny slime trails right across my wool blanket. It was so disgusting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of that copper fabric, a little bit bigger than this, you know, maybe about an inch bigger all the way around, and fold it over and sew it, and that's going to be my ground cloth. Slug proof ground cloth. Love it. So I have my fabric laid out, cut and ready to go, ready to sew it. And I went outside for a second, came back, and the dog's laying on it. And without me telling her, she just gets up and moves. She's such a big dog. So, yes, because doing everything's easier with a dog tongue in your face. Come on. Come on, get off. So every project is easier when you got a dog. So here I cut the fabric just a little bit, the copper fabric a little bit bigger than my ground cloth. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fold it over like this and sew it. Now the copper fabric, I'm pulling on it with my nails and it doesn't seem like it's going to unravel. My only concern is that if moisture does get between those two layers, if air doesn't get in there to dry, it'll get moldy and mildewy in there. But maybe the copper fabric will kill any bacteria and keep that from happening. I don't know. That is my only concern at this point. And a little concern too is the two of them sewed together. The top layer is slippery, the bottom layer is slippery, and the two will slide together. And even though they're sewn together around the edge, the middle can, geez, I don't know how could you even explain that. The middle could slide if you step on it, but it's such a small surface, I think it'll be okay. Especially since I know that they might slide a little bit. And I don't want to add any stitching in the middle to hold it, because then water will get through. Alright. You know, of course if I sew it in the middle to keep it from sliding, I could do like an X in the middle to keep it from sliding, and then I could treat it with some tarp seam sealer. That'll keep water from getting through, but I don't think I want to go through that. And I hear something beeping, so I gotta go tend to it. It's probably the dog's dinner. So here's my finished product. See, what I was talking about is when you have two items sewn together around the edges, they can slide separate from each other. You see that? And I was a little worried about stepping on it and having it slide, but the green layer is so stiff that even trying to make it slide separate is a little tough. So I don't think it's going to be a problem getting out of my hammock and stepping onto it. But this is the finished product. So it's all copper on the bottom. The slug should hate it. Cool looking, isn't it? And I just folded it over and sewed it. I didn't worry about hemming it because I don't think the copper fabric is She's trying to kiss me and the phone's in the way. Oh, you baby girl. Because the copper fabric doesn't look like it's going to unravel in any way. I've tried pulling on it and it just doesn't. And the funny thing is, I put it up to my face and tried to breathe through it and couldn't breathe through it. But yet when I put it over a cup and poured water in the cup, the water dripped through it. So some of you scientists get on there and explain to me the reason for that. Okay, again, I don't think it will absorb water and pull water up onto it, but condensation happens. So we do worry a little bit about moisture getting in between the two layers and causing mildew and stinky stuff. Since it's pretty airtight, but not watertight. But we'll see what happens. You know, if it gets skanky, maybe I could throw it in the wash. The company on one description said it's machine washable but when they were it was on Amazon, and I was reading the questions that people post asking about it, and they answered a question saying that it's not machine washable. So go figure. Maybe you can wash it by hand, but that probably wouldn't help the problem if moisture got in between there and got skanky. But we'll see. Dog likes it. Cookie. It'll definitely be slug free, and it's a good size. Oh, you see my slippers? See my slippers? It's a good size for stepping out of the hammock and stepping onto it. Leave your shoes here, you step onto it, you can even put your backpack on it. And I have enough of the copper fabric to make a second one for my hubby, or if he doesn't want one, I'll do something else with. So I know my sewing job on my slug-proof ground cover may not be the prettiest job in the world, but I'm not out to win a crafting contest. I am trying to keep the slugs away from my shoes. Oh, I can't tell you how many times I've got out of my hammock at night and stepped on my ground cover and stepped on a slug, and it's just the grossest thing. Anyway, I can't wait to put it to use and see how it works. And slugs, watch out. Be blessed. Oh, don't forget to go play with your dog.